Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires to talk about the strongest factions in the game currently. Factions, not legendary lords. I've talked quite a bit about legendary lords, the strongest, the weakest, the mediocre, the ones that are easy to play. But let's talk about factions and what makes a faction strong in Immortal Empires as things currently stand. Now, Immortal Empires is in a beta. Plenty of factions, plenty of lords do need updates. There are mechanics that need updated. There are bugs that need to be fixed. And clearly, this was not ready for a full release. They pretty much rushed it because people were not playing anymore. They didn't like the Realms of Chaos campaign, so they did rush the release of Immortal Empires, which, well, it's a mammoth undertaking. So I don't envy the developers in Creative Assembly at the moment, considering the task that is ahead of them, the things they still need to do. But I do want to emphasize for this video, you can have a strong faction but a weak legendary lord, or you can have a strong legendary lord in charge of a weak faction. As a perfect example of this, you have Scarbrand, who is an incredibly powerful legendary lord because not just of his faction effects, but also his own personal effects. He gets a significant recruitment benefit, significant campaign movement range after he wins a battle, and it ties together with the faction. But I do think that the Demons of Chaos in general are a fairly weak faction. Take out Scarbrand from the Exiles of Khorne, take out Scarbrand from the Demons of Chaos, and they end up being an overall weak faction. But he works because he just goes from battle to battle to battle, raising legions of troops along the way. And because he's able to win a lot of battles in a very short period of time, he is able to amass a very large economy through looting and sacking settlements, or raising settlements in his case. But his faction is not necessarily strong. But what makes for a strong faction? Well, the way things currently work in Immortal Empires is the ability to expand across the world as quickly and efficiently as possible. How do you do that? Well, first off, you need a good army to support that, but you also need the coin to support that army. So things like being able to recruit very powerful units from very early on, the ability to amass large armies of good troops in particular does count for quite a lot. Having an economy in your home regions is important. Having good trade, having good public order, having good growth, all of these things combine to make a strong faction. And not every faction in the game currently is able to do that. There are problems, or there's issues with campaign mechanics. As some examples of factions that should be strong really, but do suffer from one reason or another, you do have the dwarfs, and all of the dwarven factions right now, they do have a powerful army. Their legendary lords are not weak, but they have poor growth, which is also affected by the grudges, their campaign mechanic, which currently is very broken from my perspective. So their public order is also affected. Public order ties hand in hand in growth, because you have poor public order, your growth is going to be affected, and as a result of that, you're just going to be able to expand more slowly. So all of these things do count for a faction. Not having these elements together can make a faction fall behind. Another example, don't only with some of the legendary lords, but still an example, the Empire. The Empire should be in a really good place. They have a good economy, they have good units, they have good legendary lords. They're not necessarily the best in the world, but right now, due to the Imperial Authority system, they just don't work very well. Outside of Volkmar, I'd say Volkmar is the closest to having a really good Imperial campaign. Outside of Volkmar, the Empire is just very weak because of the Imperial system, or the systems they have. The Hunts Marshal should be okay, but he does have to deal with his mechanics, which aren't necessarily in the best spot either. So the Empire does have quite a few problems at the moment in Immortal Empires. So to start it off, at number 5, we have the High Elves. The High Elves have generally been considered a very strong faction ever since they were added in Warhammer 2. And this continues in Immortal Empire. Some bugs with not being able to get a certain item for Tyrion over here, some bugs with the way some of their quest work, on how quests in general work right now. But outside of that, the Elves are a fairly functional race in Immortal Empires. They don't have annoying mechanics to deal with that would diminish their ability. But beyond that, they are a race that has very good public order, largely through this chain over here, the Promenade, the Amphitheater chain, which can give them an enormous amount of control. In fact, their control, their public order, can be so strong that this building itself will generate a lot of income if you do maintain control of 100. Control of 100 for a lot of races would be a very tall order, but the High Elves can make it work very well. But on top of that, they also do have a benefit to income for their main economic chain, the Elven Fairground, if they maintain control of 100. And they absolutely can, because they have the heroes to be able to sustain them. They also have a right for control, and having high control will increase your growth and reduce, for instance, like if we look over here, we're looking at various bonuses of recruitment, construction cost, income from all buildings, local recruitment capacity. So for the Elves to have high control, which is very doable, will give them substantial benefits on the campaign map in terms of growing their settlements, getting those settlements to level 5, being able to recruit top tier units, getting their economy stronger, being able to recruit heroes, being able to recruit top tier units. The Elves do have that going for them. On top of that, they do have a good selection of heroes. If we look at their hero roster, they have handmaidens, nobles, lore masters, and mages. So they do have quite a few good options. And on top of that, this ties together with their influence system, because you can spend influence to get some better lords as well. Some better heroes, sorry, as well, like ones that give you an upkeep benefit or have a combat ability. So as the High Elves, if you start in a pretty good position to begin with, but you just get stronger throughout the campaign. And a faction that already starts in a pretty good position and gets stronger the more you play the game through influence, through public order, through the buildings above public order, and from the economic benefits that they can get from having high public order, the good growth they can get from having good public order, is a fairly powerful faction. It also helps that their army roster is really solid from the very beginning. So if I recruit a lord here, the influence system, of course, applies to them as well. But if I recruit a lord, let's see what options we do have. Nothing too amazing over there. But let's say with this one that's charmed, with this one, at the start, you'll be able to, from any basic settlement, you'll be able to recruit either archers or spearmen. Both of these are pretty good units. The spearmen, they won't do so well in melee against other tier 1 units because they are meant against cavalry and anti-large, but they are good line holders, and the Elven plan of a combination of spearmen and archers is one that works pretty well. Later on, you can unlock artillery, you can unlock dragons, better range units if you own the DLC. Another point in the favor of the High Elves is that even if you don't own any of the DLC packs, you will have a fairly good army. Even without any of the DLC, like let's just say you bought Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, none of the DLC, you want to play a faction, playing the High Elves really works because you still have access to your archers, your Lardern Seaguard, your spearmen, your cavalry. You will lack some mid to late game options like the Silver Ring Guard or the Sisters of Avalorn, which do fill a hole in the Elven roster, which is having powerful ranged armor piercing units. That is one area you may be lacking. But outside of that, you do get a great deal of power when you are playing as the High Elves, even as a baseline. And the DLC just helps fill some of the gaps. So this is a very powerful faction that has a lot to offer, especially if you're a new player or you want to pick a faction and you don't want to spend tens of dollars on DLC packs to make it work. This is not something that can necessarily be said for some other factions. Some other factions, you bought the game, well, if you don't have a DLC, they're going to be that much weaker. Skaven would be a particularly good example of that. But yeah, the High Elf game plan is really good, really solid, really steady. And on top of that, 2, maybe even 3, depending on how you Elfarian, 2 or 3 of their legendary lords start in Ulthuan, which is a fairly secure location for the most part. Yes, I've gotten an invasion from the Dark Elves over here from Marathi. Count Noctilus is proving to be a menace, so I'm gonna send an entire force to take him out. But I do believe that this force should be able to finish him, take him out, and then you do get a very good, safe starting position. Or you can play a more aggressive campaign if you do decide, for instance, to play a Leafanar over here, which is closer to the Dark Elves. Your objective is to take the Dark Elves out, as pretty much all of the High Elven Legendary Lords, I believe. So he starts closer to them, so you can take that fight to them much, much faster, and he does have some benefits. Or if you want to play a really aggressive campaign, you can play as Elfarian. You don't necessarily need to do it like this, but you can play as Elfarian and fight for the Badlands. The Elves do have a lot of options. They do have flexibility, which is actually a crucial aspect for many campaigns, to make them fun and enjoyable in particular. Like, you want to play a race that's good, solid, strong, but also a race that doesn't just go down the same path every single campaign. As Elves, sure, there are always going to be things you're going to have to do. Like, if you're playing as Tyrion, you're always going to have to deal with the Dark Elves in your initial province. If you're playing as Alariel, you're always going to have to deal with the Scourge of Cain, which is here to the north, and Nakari. But after that, you do have a great deal of campaign flexibility, which is in itself a strength, because it means that you don't have to deal with the same challenges all the time. Let's say in a certain campaign, like Marathi gets really powerful. Okay, I mean, you could go invade her, maybe you keep her in check, but you could also go further south to Illustria, or you can go to Bretonia. You do have choices, and those choices do matter. So yeah, the High Elves are in a really good spot. I'd highly recommend to play them if you just want a solid, easy enough to play, easy enough to understand faction. Regardless of the legendary lord you choose, they are in a really good spot. At number 4, there is Cathay. Now, Cathay doesn't have the best legendary lords from my perspective. Yes, they are dragons, but they don't necessarily have the combat ability of some other lords, nor do they have the magical ability of some other lords. There's somewhere in between there. But what Cathay does have is a really good economy, a really good starting position, regardless of the faction you're choosing, really safe, good growth, good faction benefits, extraordinary powerful faction benefits, if you make it work. If there are downsides with Cathay, is that you will have to spend quite a bit of effort in managing the harmony system, but if you do, you will gain tremendous benefits, income benefits, growth benefits, control benefits, corruption benefits, an army ability for all armies to summon an extra unit. It is a summon unit, so it will decay very quickly, but you do gain extraordinarily powerful campaign benefits if you do manage the harmony very well. Having +8 control at faction-wide, 40 growth, an income benefit of 25% is extraordinary. Though it is some work. It isn't exceptionally hard, but it is something that you're going to have to deal with. It's not really a faction as recommended as the High Elves to start as player, but there is a lot of power if you do get it right as Cathay. I'd say one of the strongest benefits they do have as a faction as well is the fact that overall Cathay is in a fairly safe position. That might sound surprising, that people have reported, oh, I get attacked by a lot of factions, but really, you just need to manage things well. Like, the ogres to the west aren't especially hostile towards you, and ogres in general right now being played by the eye aren't especially strong. They're not too big of a threat. There's problems with the camp system. There's problems with the ogres as a faction in general, I feel, right now. So you're relatively safe. There are some issues to the north with 1 and maybe even 2 legendary lords over here. If I toggle the Fog of War, toggle Fog of War mod, there's Kolic over here, and there's Village. Those 2 can be an issue, and you do have invasions happening on the Great Bastion as well. But unlike the baseline campaign in the Realms of Chaos, where managing to defend the Great Bastion can be an absolute nightmare, here is much, much easier, far less of a substantial problem than it was over there. So it's far easier to get going, far easier to protect, far easier to defend the Great Bastion than it was before. And Cathay doesn't necessarily have a lot of foes. Yes, there's some Skaven here under Clan Eshin, there's the Dark Elves to the east, and Lizardmen to the southeast. So that is 3 legendary lords, but it is over a fairly large amount of territory, and you do have allies. The Cathayan factions will work relatively well together. There's some issues with confederations, like if you want to confederate the other legendary lord of the faction, that can be an issue. But outside of that particular problem, Cathay works really well and is really powerful, and you can get a really good steamroller. They have good economy with these buildings, with the goods emporium. You get, or the alternative in the Yang, they generate a good amount of economic power. They have good control, and they have a really solid army roster from the very start with peasants, though you can easily switch to Jade Warriors and Jade Warrior crossbowmen and get a really good balanced army working from fairly early on. There aren't any significant weaknesses for Cathay. No significant problems we're dealing with. Their campaign systems just work. Because they were a faction designed for the Realms of Chaos, and I think they are probably the only one that actually, from the original game, from the baseline game, that actually scales very well with the globe-trotting adventure that Immortal Empires is, because there's a lot of territory around the map, and Cathay does have the ability to expand around the world. If there is any issue, is that the campaign can feel very boring. I'm not joking, because it is so incredibly easy. Like, this is turn 35 on Legendary, and I've already taken a lot of Cathay. The other factions, like the Northern Provinces or the Celestial Riverlands, are my allies. And so I've already captured the vast majority of territory. It's fairly safe. I've already dealt with the major threats. And you can do this as either Cathayan faction. You can do this fairly quickly, fairly solidly, and you can get a lot of balls rolling, so to speak. And so Cathay can certainly expand around the world. There's 2 other things as well. They have the caravan system. Now, the caravan system may not necessarily have the best late game potential. If you end up at a war with a lot of factions in particular, you just may not be able to send caravans, but you can earn a significant amount of gold early on through the caravans, like thousands of gold through these caravans that will really help you out. Just having a faction that by default has a good economy and then just can earn thousands of gold pieces within the first few turns gives you an enormous early game advantage. Now, some other factions can take advantage of the caravans sent by Cathayan factions, take them out, get that gold, get like 10, 20,000, 30,000 in some cases, depending on the lords you're playing. But that always carries certain negative implications, because you end up at war with the Cathayan factions who own the caravans. You're sending the caravans here, and the caravans do seem to be, for the most part, at least early on, in a pretty good position in the game right now. That obviously can change, but right now, as things stand, Cathay is in a really good spot. And then you have the compass, and the compass gives you even more growth, or control, or casualty replenishment, or winds of magic benefits. So you already have a faction that can get a lot in terms of controlled growth and income, and you can boost that even further with the great compass. You can expand really quickly, maintain large armies, paint the map in your colors. And it certainly helps that you start in a region, you start in Cathay with both legendary lords, and they have good relations with the other lords of Cathay, and you can get alliances and then confederacy with them. Like, I've already confederated one faction over here, actually 2 factions, dealt with some rebels, got some good deals with the Celestial Riverlands over here, and now I'm just moving to the southeast and to the east in general to wipe out the last resistance. And after that, within a couple of turns, I will be able to expand across the map wherever I want, to the west, to the east. Incredibly powerful faction. Does take some work balancing the yin and yang, but it does have a lot going for it. It has artillery, it has ranged units, it has melee units, it has monster units. Not the best legendary lords in the game. Not the most powerful casters, not the most powerful faction benefits as some other legendary lords provide, but as a faction, Cathay is in a really good spot. Could use some work, I feel, with regards to the yin and yang. It can feel frustrating at times. May feel a bit too safe as well. But yeah, in a really good spot overall. And number 3 is the Vampire Counts. Regardless of the legendary lord you choose, they are all incredibly potent right now. Well, they have to be. 3 out of 4 of them do have a lot of enemies to deal with, but they can because they have a lot going for them as a faction as things stand. The Vampire Counts were in a fairly weak position for honestly much of their existence, though Creative Assembly has given them some love since then. And this is a faction that doesn't actually have a lot of DLC packs. Imagine if they got the really good rework or a lot of effort was put in a DLC pack, they would become even stronger. But why are the Vampire Counts so good? Well, much ado has been made about Helmengorst and his zombie tree and his ability to fight with zombies that just don't die in battles. But one of the things I believe shouldn't be ignored is the fact that the Vampire Counts in general are in a really good spot. They may not necessarily have the best growth in the world, I suppose, though it's certainly better than dwarves, but they do have structures to get beyond that. They have structures that will generate good control and income at the same time. Structures with good growth, structures with a good amount of income to them, or combination. Having like the Gibbet, sure, it may not go to some ridiculous levels, but look, at level 3, if you upgrade it, you get 500 income. That is quite a lot, and it also boosts your control of a region. And then, of course, there's the Vampiric Corruption, which seems to, like all corruption currently in Warhammer 3, seems to go up very quickly, regardless of the faction you're playing. So you can gain a lot as a Vampire Counts. Like you can gain up to 10 control from Vampiric Corruption. They may not necessarily be the fastest expanders, because they will deal with the problem of if they're moving in a region that they don't control without good Vampiric Corruption, they will start taking casualties, though the effect of that seems to have been diminished severely. But really, what makes the Vampire Counts so good is their recruitment. I think it's actually one of the best in the game at the moment, in terms of just being able to get a very, very large number of units very quickly. I'll just give you an example. I fought a very large battle here near Khemri, etc. Did not go down without the fight. So let's say I recruit a lord, and then I go to Raise Dead. This is the special Vampire Counts recruitment. This is available for every region, but if you recruit in a region where there's been a lot of bloodshed, where a lot of people died, you can recruit a lot. Like I can recruit corpse carts with balefire, unholy lodestone, crypt horrors, and some regular units as well. Like, this is a really good roster. It is going to be limited, of course, but I can get, if I were to have the money, I don't have it right now because I've been raising army fighting already. This is only turn 16, and I'm already maintaining 2 full stacks, one here and one here, and soon enough I'll be able to afford another stack with this lord. So you can certainly maintain very large armies from the very south from pretty quickly. Like, I was actually surprised because I just kind of started playing Manfred, who was despised in the community for certain things he's done in the lore. But I was actually surprised at how easy it was to deal with Volkmar, who's supposed to be his nemesis. I was like, I just crushed Volkmar. But how did I crush him? Well, Raise Dead just allows you to recruit a very large number of units very quickly. Like, even in a province, like, this is my starting settlement. No battle has been fought here, right? Even here, right now, I can recruit 6 units of zombies. Really cheap, by the way. Some skeletons, some dire wolves, some bats. Like, if I really put my mind to it, I can recruit. With the money I currently have, had more, I'd be able to recruit more. But I can recruit 9 units at the moment. If I take a settlement, sack a settlement, I'll gain even more money. That will allow me to recruit even more. Now, sure, this is putting my economy in the deficit extremely early on. Keep in mind that. Extremely early on so far in this campaign. And I can get, like, really powerful armies without significant cost. If I had more money, I could fill this entire army up with really good units from pretty quickly. Like, this recruitment is really good, and it's not your only source of recruitment. You still have regular recruitment. Get the buildings. You don't just have to kill enemies. Like, the costs, right? The costs are about the same. In fact, it might be a bit more expensive to do regular recruitment, but you can raise the dead especially near battlefields where a lot of blood has been shed. So, oh, take out an enemy stack, you might lose some units, no problem. Just use the money you gain from fighting that battle to replace any units, or maybe even get better units. You don't have to go back to your home region. This makes the vampire counts an unstoppable horde of death. Or you can play Helmangorst and just play with zombies. Oh, he can get enormous amounts of zombies. But regardless of the vampire counts legendary lord that you are playing, you are going to have a fairly good economy, fairly good growth. You're going to have attrition as well against your enemies because of the vampiric corruption, so they're going to have a hard time actually taking you out. And you'll just be able to amass very large armies very quickly with relative ease when you're playing this faction. You might be fighting a lot of enemies dependent on the legendary lord that you have, but you do have the power to deal with all of that as the vampire counts. Just being able to recruit large armies for not a too significant cost and maintaining them is a power that very few other factions do have. And it gives you the ability to move across the map, to paint the map in your colors, to expand quickly and efficiently. One of the strongest things you can have going for yourself as a faction in general is the ability to keep the momentum going, to just go from battle to battle to battle and not be stopped. Because while initially everyone's going to be on the same playing field, eventually you just become so powerful that the AI has no genuine response for you, and you are waiting for the end game crisis to start. And that is the sheer power that the vampire counts have going for them. And all of their legendary lords are pretty good right now. Manfred might seem like a joke, and he is a joke in the eyes of the community, but he does have some significant benefits through the books of Nagash that he can get, and double if he goes to Castle Drakenhof. So all the way back from here, well, to here. That would be a fairly long and arduous journey, but you know what? You can certainly make it. Give me turn 60, I'll probably control half the damn world as Manfred, if I really wanted to. And you start in one of the worst positions when you're playing as Manfred, but regardless of which one you choose, you are going to be in a really good position. There were a lot of memes before Immortal Empires came out that Manfred was going to be torn to shreds. In reality, he's probably one of the top dogs in the Southlands, and my, how things have changed. And number 2 is the Greenskins. Of course, it would be the Greenskins. The Greenskins, and oddly enough, I'm getting some weird icon here with upkeep because I just loaded the saves from the vampire counts. I guess I'm getting it, but beyond that bug, and it clearly is a bug, icon-wise, the Greenskins are in an incredible place right now in Total War Warhammer 3. In fact, as a baseline faction, with no DLC associated to them, not being a DLC faction, they are probably the best faction right now. Because even without the DLC, they have a lot of powerful units, good heroes, good lords. And with the DLC, Grom the Punch is just something else, I feel, with his Cauldron, because he gets all the other benefits the Greenskins have, and then on top of that you get faction-wide buffs with the Cauldron. Yeah, that makes it incredibly powerful. But what makes the Greenskins so good? Well, they don't trade, right? So you might think, oh, you're at an economic disadvantage. No, because they gain enormous benefits in terms of sacking settlements. Grimgore, for instance, here gets 30% more post-battle loot. But every Greenskin Lord will either have this, or both of them, where if you loot or sack a settlement, you gain a significant amount of income from doing that. So you can gain tons and tons of gold fighting battles, sacking settlements, and although reducing them to level 1, you don't care, because for the Greenskins you get so much gold from sacking those settlements and even reducing them to level 1 that you can easily rebuild them. And the thing is, that's actually a really good game plan for the Greenskins because it works incredibly well. How is that? Well, you at level 1, like this is a level 2 settlement, right? If at level 1 you can get the pile of shiny stuff, that is 250 income right off the bat. At level 1. At level 3 is 500 income. But at level 1 you get a significant amount of coin already. But it's not just coin, it's also growth. 20 growth at level 1 from the idols. That's just level 1. You get these 2 structures, and every settlement at level 1, or one of these structures at level 1, you will have either good growth or a good income in that settlement. At level 2, you can get both. You can also maintain really good control. This is not like the vampire counts, which have a combination of buildings to give both like control and income, or growth and control or income, but you still have significant benefits with this. Like you can get 4 control, which goes up to 6, and if you have like a proper settlement building, it can go up to 10 control for each structure. And then you also gain 2 control and 20 growth and minus corruption from a commandment. This is probably one of the best commandments in the entire game. And even further than that, I'm not even joking, this is how ridiculous this goes. So you have a commandment that gives you 2 control. You have a building that at level 1 gives you 4. So that's 6 control for a province. And you can get multiple of these buildings. So you can get a ridiculous amount of control. And control buffs growth. Right, so if you get more and more control, you buff your growth by a substantial amount just by having that control really high. But you have a research that gives you 3 more control. So you're looking here, consider this, if you only have a boss tent, that's 4 plus 2, 6, plus the research, that's 9 control. That's 9 control for each province that you have. You do need to maintain the province, but that is incredible. And then you boost your growth, your economy, your control even further. Gets even crazier when you start thinking about the raiding stashes, which give you more post-battle loot and stacks. You can get these in any level 3 settlement. The Greenskins just have such an amazing potential because they can earn so much money from raiding and sacking and looting settlements. You start going as the Greenskins, as any of their legendary lords, minus Costin, who has some issues, but you start going as any of the Greenskin legendary lords, and you can literally fight the world and win. And the reason you can win is you just won't run out of money. Rebellions are not an issue to speak of really. Even if you constantly get raided and sacked, you will never really face the issue of rebellion. As for their armies, they don't have quite the same insane amount of recruitment power that the vampire counts have, but they can get a lot of basic recruitment slots pretty quickly in every single one of their regions, and their baseline units of goblins they can get in every settlement can be really good. They might be lacking in armor piercing, but that doesn't matter because you can then upgrade each individual unit with scrap, get some armor piercing or extra ammunition. Every single unit can be upgraded. And then there is the WA mechanic. You declare a WA, right? I've declared the WA against Goldtooth, right? Going after Greases. And every army will basically double in size. Now, the units that you get as part of a WA, since I just declared one, none of my armies are going to have anything really, not too many units. But the units are not going to be quite as good as your main ones because you won't be able to upgrade them. But they're 3 units. Each army is not 20 units. Each Greenskin army during a WA is 40 units. Oh, by the way, the WA meter itself, well, while you're filling it up, also gives you extra control and extra benefits. And if you want the ultimate expression of this, just gonna toggle the Fog of War. If you want the ultimate expression of this, though, this is gonna be a DLC faction we're talking about. You have Grom the Punch. He generally doesn't do so well when he's controlled by the AI, but Grom has all of these benefits, but he goes even further because through his cauldron he can get more control, more growth, more money, more income benefits. And Grom, in particular, he is the ultimate expression of this, but he just represents how strong the Greenskins are. Grom can literally fight every single faction around him with ease. I'm not talking here of campaign or, oh, you declare war on everyone around you and you use cheeses and clever tactics to win. I'm literally talking not giving a fuck and conquering every single thing around you and only being stopped because your settlements are going to be raided by everyone around you constantly. But yeah, I've played the campaign as Grom on Legendary and I can tell you I was decimating everyone with ease. Emphasis on that, with ease. Now, he is the ultimate expression, but regardless of the legendary lord you're playing, you are going to be able to get a lot of things done with ease, with the exception of Skarsnik. He has some issues. I know people say, oh, you can make him work. It's like, I don't care about making him work. I play Grimgor, Azag, Grom. I beat the crap out of everyone without giving a single shit. I don't want to put effort in that. You do have to put effort as Karsnik, but even so, he still has a lot of power because of the faction he plays. So yeah, the Greenskins are in an incredible race, in an incredible place. They really desperately needed a rework in Warhammer 2, and my, what a rework it has become. Before that rework, the Greenskins were just getting thrashed by the dwarves. Since that rework, they've been decimating the dwarves again and again and again in campaigns in Warhammer 2, and now in Warhammer 3. That is not going to change anytime soon. And at number 1, in terms of the most powerful factions currently in the game, we have the Warriors of Chaos, or the Champions of Chaos, whatever you have. But both the Warriors and Champions, which are the same faction, just the Champions are a DLC that was recently released. But the Warriors of Chaos are currently the strongest faction by far. But what makes them so very strong? Well, first off, it is how their settlements work. If you have a minor settlement, you're only going to gain 1 building slot and you won't really gain much from it. But you do have dark fortresses. And dark fortresses are incredibly difficult to assault, even as a player. And what does that mean? Well, the AI will generally avoid assaulting them, so your settlements are fairly safe, and they generate, each of them generates an incredible amount of income. At level 1, you get raid trophies, and that generates 400 income. But it goes further because you get other buildings that increase the favor from all buildings in the local region. So this is would actually generate 680 right here at level 1, and at level 3 it's generating 1400 almost. And it also gives a benefit to post-battle loot and sacking settlements. I've already mentioned how sacking settlements can generate a huge amount of income. You gain a benefit from your main income building to sacking settlements faction-wide, and it stacks. And so you can go from battle to battle, sacking settlements, looting, burning them to the ground more or less, because you don't care about minor settlements. And then the best part is vassalization. The Warriors of Chaos are really heavily based on vassalization, and Creative Assembly just buffed that in a really major way, because now you can vassalize human and elven factions. So, you know what I've done here? I started here. This is turn 24. The Empire bends the knee to Greyfather Nurgle. Middenheim, Middenland, Hockland, Kazrak is over here, though Varus is going to put them in the ground pretty quickly. The Wood Elves, and I have all of these as vassals, which give me a decent amount of vassal tribute. It isn't too great, especially since these settlements are going to be fairly low level right now, and I am controlling some of the key ones, but they do give you a benefit in terms of income. And for most of the legendary lords, as the Warriors cast, though not Festus, who I'm playing over here, you can also gain a benefit faction-wide from having more vassals. Like if you're playing as Archeon or Kolek, you gain substantial benefits for having more and more vassals. So you can just keep going, getting more and more vassals, increasing your benefits, getting more and more powerful. Kolek is insane because he gets more strength personally for each vassal. Archeon gets an enormously powerful benefit to diplomatic relations and souls, which is the faction currency for the Warriors of Chaos. So I'm not doing too badly on souls at almost 12,000 at turn 24. It is a bit ridiculous, I admit, but that's the first reign. The system of vassals and dark fortresses makes them really powerful to begin with. But then there's the recruitment system. You don't have regular recruitment, but you do have like something similar to the Vampires Raised Dead. So for each region you control, dependent on the buildings, the corruption, various factors, you can gain certain units. So here, I have 1600. This is a guy I just recruited. If I just collect this, all of this, within a single turn, I get 14 units in this army, and it can get even better. This is not the best you can do. You can get the full stack in a single turn, and that makes you even more protected. Like, these dark fortresses would be very difficult for the AI to take. They can have powerful garrisons, but the fact they can literally recruit an army out of thin air and then put it on the defense, or say, oh, the AI, you know, the Kislev, for instance, declared war on me, they might move against Auckland. Well, you know, I just can just send an army to beat the shit out of Kislev. It's like this instant powerful recruitment gives them a significant advantage, and it's region-wide, or province-wide, sorry. And it can also be global. Yeah, global. It can also, there's some things that you will gain a global benefit, though. Here, since I just took the settlement in this province, I won't necessarily have that, so I'll only get Marauders and cast Warhounds with poison, so some limited units. But the fact that you can recruit quite a lot of units very quickly is significant. And it's the variety of units as well. This is something that the vampire accounts also have an advantage of. It's not just the fact that you can recruit units very quickly, it's that you can get a variety of units. So you can get trolls, you can get cast warhounds, you can get marauders, you can get the Cyber champions, and later on warriors of chaos, cast knights, etc. You can get some really good units. And that's just your baseline recruitment. You don't have any regular recruitment, so you're kind of lacking there compared to the vampire accounts who also have regular recruitment. But you also have gifted units. Now gifted units are things that you get through the gifts of chaos. So I don't necessarily think I have any choices here that would be, well, except if I go in Nurgle. So if I go there, and I can get gifted units as well. These two units at this point. So you can get powerful artillery, powerful monsters, powerful units of chaos. Now I wouldn't be able to maintain this army really for a very long time, but it is like this is just an example. I wouldn't actually care too much to deal with Kislev, like she's gonna have other issues to attack the dark fortress. Like if she did attack it, like she'd get wiped out more or less. So yeah, you have strong benefits in economy, you have strong benefits because of vassals, and you have strong benefits in terms of like flexibility around the map, dealing with any threats. Like yeah, I could keep this army, deal with Catherine, get some more money from raiding or sacking settlements to maintain that army, and just respond to her. To an army that I literally recruited in a single turn. That is substantial. On top of that, the current roster of Warriors of Chaos is in a really good spot. Recruitment-wise, they get the benefit of being able to upgrade quite a lot, though not all of their units, but quite a lot of their units. Like for instance, I can have these Marauders, I can upgrade them to Cast Warriors, and then I can upgrade them with Chosen. And you do have these kind of upgrade options as any of the Legendary Lords of the Warriors of Chaos that you're playing currently. And that's on top of the fact that pretty much every single Legendary Lord of the Warriors of Chaos has some really powerful effects. Archeon, in my perspective, is strongest, probably followed by Kolic, though Festus is certainly not a joke. It is hilarious in this campaign, by the way. I've literally made him emperor, more or less. I forced Karl Franz to bend the knee, so to speak, to the one true emperor of mankind, Festus the Leech Lord. It is a hilarious situation. I've done so pretty quickly as well. So yeah, some fairly substantial benefits, the ability to go around the map. The fact you have vassals is an enormous benefit because each of those vassals is going to have their own armies. So you don't have to worry about minor raiders and incursions and all that and worrying about defending minor settlements. It is substantial how much you can accomplish when you don't have to worry about protecting your own provinces, because the AI vassals will do that for you. And if the AI is stupid enough to come even close to a Dark Fortress, you can respond to that threat instantly. Like, as long as you see them, as long as you take notice, as long as they're one turn away from attacking, you can take notice. If you have money in the bank, recruit a fucking army. They will need legions of troops. Like, Kislev would need legions of troops to take either Mindenheim or the Brass Keep for me. And if my vassals get wiped out, yeah, sure, that's a that would be annoying, absolutely, but they're just vassals, then they're not used, so you can't really be stopped as the Warriors of Chaos. The Greenskins can, the Vampire Counts can, the High Elves can, but there's very few ways you can see a Warriors of Chaos player losing a campaign at the moment. It would take a monumental effort to do so. A huge amount. Like, I'm not sure the endgame armies, how well they do against the Warriors of Chaos, against a single Dark Fortress. That's not necessarily highest level. Imagine a Dark Fortress that's level 5, has a stronger garrison, supported by an army that you can instantly recruit. That is phenomenal. That is incredible power. And yeah, there is certainly a DLC power creep with the Warriors of Chaos, but I think in future Total Wars or going in the future, they're going to represent a standard that many factions are going to have to live up to. They did a really, really good job at taking one of the worst factions of Warhammer 1 and 2 and making them in one of the best factions currently in Warhammer 3. The best faction in Warhammer 3. And that's it. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications. And I'll see you next time. If you do enjoy the content, join my Discord. I do post when I do these videos, much easier to keep track of them. And also, if you enjoy the content, consider donating via PayPal, Patreon, or through YouTube channel membership. It helps keep the channel going. Stay tuned for more, boys and girls.